Put your hand up. She hates the limelight, but put your hand up. She's the fantastic woman that makes it all happen on the ground. And in the first couple of years, you know, I did a hell of a lot of work with the other people who were doing it, but at the moment, Zinnia carries a lot of the day-to-day stuff. But in order for me to keep doing this amongst running a business in London with 45 people, I don't sleep a lot. I work most weekends, and that's what it takes.
Where have you been in Africa? Where have you grown from South Africa? Where else have you been? Where are you going?
So this year is the second year we're in Nairobi. So last year was the first year in Nairobi. We're in Strathmore. In 2 weeks we're going to Lagos. Next year we're hoping to get to Cairo or Accra, and also do Nairobi and Lagos again. And if we can swing the sponsorship and whatever, we're getting a lot of people asking us to come to Rwanda. I don't know why, but it seems that somebody wants us to go to Rwanda, so that's happening, if we can do that. My vision, hopefully, is that we can start getting to 5 or 6 different countries around Africa and do stuff like this consistently through the year. Because I think that that's probably one of the only things that's going to start building an ecosystem which is sustainable. Because there's far too much disparate work going on. So, yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that I like about Gareth, we've been friends for a number of years now, is that what he said earlier about entrepreneurism is actually a lot about hard work, right? It's about showing up every day and getting this stuff done. And so yeah, it's hard, right? But it's the only way that you make it successful, right? You know, people hear about you're being successful 5 years later, and they forget that it took you 5 years and that it's hard to do. So, you know, congratulations on building a business from scratch, a couple businesses, and you've actually, in that 5-year period, I should add, he started a business, flipped it, sold it, and then started another business. So this isn't even the second one.
Yeah. And I think also, you know, like I talked earlier in my talk about, at the very beginning of the day, where I met Jason Freed, Craig Newmark, Jimmy Wells at South by Southwest. And I remember talking to Jason Freed, and he had this whole idea about this book that he was going to write and about entrepreneurship. And the thing that he said at that lunch, which has stuck with me from day one, or from then, has been normally an overnight success takes 10 years. And actually, when I look back, you know, I started Tech for Africa in 2006. So in 2 years' time, it's going to be 10 years for me. But yet, I've only been doing 5 years of events. So, you know.
You've been taking it easy.
Yeah, I've been taking it easy. So over to me. So one of the reasons I wanted to ask Erik to speak was, you know, he's a super busy guy. Most of what is around you now is because of him. That's fair to say, right?
Well,
I mean, there's lots of other people that have helped it.
Yeah, the community kind of built this space.
Community built it, but you got it kickstarted back in the day.
Yeah, so I think everything needs a champion.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a business owner, you are the champion.
Yeah.
Right? For our community, there's a couple of champions who started us off. So the advisors of the iHub, you know, the Conrads and the Becky Wanjikus, and you know, there's the Riaz Bachani and Josiah Mugambi and Juliana Rotich also kind of came together, right? But that it needed champions to push it through and build this thing that nobody really understood what it would be. We kind of just knew, kind of at a gut level, that there was a need for the technology industry here in Nairobi, that we needed a place where we could meet face to face. And the idea that the coffee bar is in the middle is not by accident, right? It's a place where you can get up and, you know, you go grab a coffee or water and you meet somebody else, and who knows, that might be your next CTO, or it might be your next employee, or who knows what's going to happen, right? And that serendipity, that engineering serendipity, has been a part of this from the very beginning. And I remember from the launch back in March of 2010, you know, Conrad standing up here and introducing it to the community and saying, okay, we've laid the foundation, now it's up to you to decide what to do with it. What we build on top of this foundation, the structure that's built, is on you. And what's happened is, over the last 4 years, some really cool stuff has happened. So we've got iHub Research, we've got the UX Lab, we've got the M Lab with the incubator, and all this stuff. And a lot of that has come from the community here asking for it. Sometimes it's our corporate partners, sometimes it's individuals in the iHub. Id Salim, who passed away last year, he's the guy who's just a member of the iHub, who came up with the idea for our supercomputer cluster, right? And it's really gratifying to see that people from this community meet and do things with each other, but they also build things here.
Yeah. And, you know, like, I think one of the things I want to get across before I ask you the big question is, a lot of people say to me, you know, why did you do Tech for Africa? Why do you do it? Why do you give up time with your wife? I'm married now, which brings a whole lot of different pressures to the environment. I can trace back 2 events in my career so far that both happened at events that I went to. One was South by Southwest in Austin, which is why I'm so loyal to South by Southwest as an event, even though I think it's changing a lot. And secondly, an event that I went to in London called Future of Web Apps, where I met the first guy who invested in my first company. And I pitched him 3 ideas the next week, and he said no to all 3 of them. And then I went back and pitched him another idea, and he said no to that. And then the last idea he said yes to, and we raised money, and I sold it 18 months later. So it was that serendipity of going to an event and meeting people and talking to them that kickstarted my career all those years ago. And like I said to you right at the beginning, I was just this dude from South Africa. You know, you go to Austin and you say, hey, you're from South Africa. Sorry, I'm from South Africa. No one knows what that's like. Everyone thinks that South Africans live under trees. And you know, most people are pretty ignorant about what the environment is like. And they're even more ignorant about what the rest of Africa is like. So it's super, super frustrating. And I was probably the only South African there that year, if that. And even you and I probably like the one of 3 Africans that were there. So we were kind of the early trailblazers in many respects, but it was those pivotal events that I can look back at in my career which changed the way things happened for me. And so the reason I'm doing Tech for Africa, one of the reasons, is because I'm hoping to create those serendipitous events for everybody here so that as a collective we start building stuff.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because there's something that's important here too, which is that it's important to give back to the community that you come from, right? We built Ushahidi and we said, we're from this community in Nairobi, if this is the way the money needs to come in to build the IHUB, then let's do that, right? You know, you wanted to build Tech for Africa as a way to give back and allow other people to get that same serendipity that you had. And it's an important concept, right? Because you actually gain so much more when you give back to the same community you're from than you would if you just took from it all the time. And it needs people to step up all the time. There's always new people stepping up. Jessica has done that here in the iHub community. I see faces out here that I see stepping up to do things like Bar Camp Kenya, you know, Bar Camp Nairobi, I mean, or setting up the new tech hub in Mombasa or in Kisumu, new places that are coming up, right? You know, but it takes you stepping away from your own selfish interests, and what actually happens is your own selfish interests actually are probably more fulfilled because you were willing to give back, right? And so Tech for Africa maybe doesn't apply anything to the bottom line for Gareth's business in London, right? But that doesn't matter because when he leaves that business and goes somewhere else, there's 1,000 places he could go. And it doesn't take the smartest guy in the room to do that. I mean, he might be much smarter than I am, but I'm not the smartest guy in the room, right? By any stretch of the imagination. I'm just
neither am I, for the record. I'm not the smartest guy in the room.
We're the 2 dumbest blokes in the room, right? But we're here and we're trying stuff, right? And that's what it takes. It takes the courage to try. It takes the courage to inspire others and try and get something done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to try and get Erik here was he's had a really interesting journey over the last couple of years. And many of you probably know of this neat device that he's starting to get out, or trying to get out, and is about to get out, called Brick. So how many of you know about Brick? So
I like to see those hands.
So why don't you unbox it? So I'm going to let him introduce it quickly, but I'm going to talk about it from my perspective. So, you know, from where I sat over in London and after building Tech for Africa and building my companies and having known Erik for a while now, I've kind of seen what he's done and seen the opportunities that he's had access to. And a little while ago, he made a choice to focus on Brick after having gotten this started and a couple other things and worked at Ushahidi. And I was like, you know, what do you know about hardware? And because I don't know anything about hardware, and like the thought scares me. But yet here he is, and he's about to ship a product that I think could change the world, because it's going to enable the rest of the undeveloped world, the emerging world, to get access to the internet. And that's a powerful thing. I said it this morning. When 750 million mobile devices get onto smartphones, the market's going to boom, right? And somebody's got to be there to take advantage of that and to participate in that. And so he's going to be one of the layers, I think, in that's going to enable it. And so what I wanted him to do is to talk about his journey since then, so everybody here gets a sense of what it's like to actually get something like this to market. Because you ain't going to hear it better than from the horse's mouth.
So the Brick, just kind of very simply, I'll just explain what it is. It's an internet connectivity device To break it down very simply, it's a router, it's a modem, and it's a battery. So if the power goes off, it keeps going. If your normal internet connection goes down, it fails over to SIM card. There's a slot here for a SIM card, and so there's SIM card. You can power it off anything from a car battery to a solar panel to the wall. If the power goes off or if it spikes to 500 watts, it'll still keep running. There's Ethernet in, so you can just set it up as your normal router. USB out or in, so if you want to power something off of this, you can, like your phone. And it has an antenna jack, so if you can't quite get a good signal off your, the local mast, you can put an antenna in there and reach out further. And then for you hardware hackers, so people who like that kind of stuff, there's a GPIO port here that you can plug other hardware into. It's a completely open hardware stack there, so if you can build it with an Arduino or something like that, you can plug it in here. And so, yeah, I didn't know anything about hardware. The idea for the brick, where did it come from? So I was in South Africa, actually, after a conference down there, and I was talking to a local entrepreneur who was, a little bit miffed about his business. He was undercapitalized, and usually when you're undercapitalized in a tech business, one of my first things to do is say, why don't you go further down the tech stack? Try and own something more foundational to your business. So what he did was he sold internet connectivity in cafes and restaurants, hotels, and then they could resell it. So he provided that service. And I said, why don't you build your own router? He said, that's ridiculous. I said, okay, I don't know anything about routers, sure, it probably is ridiculous. But I got on the plane a couple hours later, and I was sitting there with my notebook, and my power was out on my phone and my computer, so I actually had to think. And I sat there and I was like, I wonder if we designed a router that was actually made for our environment, what would we put in it? And that's where the name brick came from. It's like a brick shape. Nothing sexy about that. And then I said, well, I need to have a battery in it, because one of our problems is the power goes off intermittently, right? And it'd be nice to be able to stay connected even when the power goes off. And then, the problem too is sometimes the internet connection is pretty wobbly and you want to switch to something else. What if you could just kind of easily switch to 3G instead of your normal Ethernet connection or something? Or what if I wanted to travel around? And this is where the brick idea came from. And so that's kind of got sketched out. What people don't realize was that was in December of 2011. So what year is it now?
So it's 2014, guys.
Yeah. So we
so just do the maths quickly, because we're not smart, right? I'm just beautiful. Do the maths. That's a good couple of years of hard graft.
We spent a year and a half prototyping before we got to something that we thought, okay, let's see if other people think this is cool too. And we did a Kickstarter at this time last year, and we raised $175,000 there. We asked for 125, we got 175. It was a pretty good market indication. Thank you to the one guy who appreciates that. And that was actually, people think that's about the money. Yeah, the money is nice, but what actually is most important, it's a market research tool, right? That allows us to see if other people think this is interesting too. It was enough for us to say, hey, this is all came from Ushahidi. Ushahidi's funding all this internally. It's enough for us to tell our board, hey, we think we need to spin this out to be an independent organization, for profit, because if it stays within a nonprofit like Ushahidi, the business will be throttled. Okay, it'll be hamstrung. And it took us until October of last year to get that approval and get the licensing. So part of the equity of this is owned by Ushahidi. If it does well, then Ushahidi does well. If it doesn't do well, then Ushahidi doesn't lose anything but the money put in originally.
I'm just going to pause you there quickly, because I need you guys to think about this very carefully. How many of you know what the Mozilla business model is? No, you know. Think about it. Mozilla, what does Mozilla create? Thunderbird, Firefox, a couple other things. Google search.
Make $50 million a year on it.
They make $50 million a year from having people search through Firefox. And that funds everything else that they do, right? So I'll ask you this. What is the single best decision that Ushahidi has made in the last year if this takes off?
Yeah, if Brick takes off, Ushahidi won't need any more money from anybody else.
Forever. Which means that Ushahidi can do what?
Whatever we want.
Exactly. How cool is that?
So I didn't know anything about hardware, right? So how the hell did we do this? Well, that is, you're sitting in the place where a lot of people come through when they come to Nairobi. I found the one guy who knew anything about hardware. He spent 12 years doing medical device manufacturing, and he joined as a volunteer. He volunteered for 6 months before he joined the team. Another guy who volunteered for 9 months did the firmware. He's the first guy who ever did the fingerprint scanner for iOS devices, so really knows firmware well. And so these are the guys that kind of volunteer their time before they ever got paid a single cent, a single shilling, nothing, right? Finally, we get to the level where the Kickstarter is going. So now we've got it spun out as a company. Now you think, I know quite a few people, right? I meet all the investors who come to Kenya. They all come through here, and I talk to all of them, okay? So I know a lot of people. And that's not a brag, that's just what
Sorry,
happens.
I'm just going to pause you there. He knows a lot of people. I know a lot of people. He knows a lot of people.
So you know, you think it's easy to earn, to raise your money. The guys who are starting new companies here, you think it's like, okay, I can raise some money. You don't know how hard it is to raise money. So you know how hard it is to raise money. A couple people here do, right? It took me, starting in October, 5 months to raise our seed round. I was talking to people in San Francisco, in New York, in Boston, in Austin, in Nairobi, in South Africa. And we finally raised the money. It takes us a long time. And that was a full-time job for me. I couldn't focus on anything else. If I did, I couldn't keep track of all these different people we were talking to, be available on the phone. I was chasing people down, didn't matter what time of day it was. If that's the time you can jump on the phone, then I'm there, right? So it takes us that long to do it. And that just ended in March of this year, right? So it's a grind. If you're trying to do your own company, be prepared to work hard. You're gonna work hard, you're gonna work crazy hours, you're gonna do whatever it takes to make it work. You're gonna have to build your team at the same time as you're trying to raise your money. You have to build a product that everybody wants at the same time. You have to get the marketing and everything set up in advance so that it's ready to go when we launch. We're launching next week on Wednesday. We're taking over the Sandstorm store in Eriks Center on Wednesday for the whole day. So feel free to come on by and play with some bricks and see how it works. It's been a long grind, but we're finally there. We're shipping bricks next week as well to 800 people. These are our pre-orders, and they are in 45 countries around the world. So we're a global business from the go. We do all our design and engineering right here in Nairobi, right here in this building. But we can't do our manufacturing here because our industrial and import laws do not make it conducive for business. So we actually have to do it in another country. We do it in Austin, in Texas. And they ship from the US to everywhere in the world.
So I think the point is that, a lot of people that I've spoken to the last day, and certainly through Tech Africa for a long time, make the assumption that a guy like me has it easy, and that a guy like Erik has it easy. We know investors, I know every investor in London. I can introduce anybody to any investor in London. That doesn't mean anything. It means that I have to do the hard work to get the meeting, to make it happen, right? People think that, we get to kind of do stuff and it's really easy and that the kind of road is paved with gold and whatever, but it's not. You got to work as hard as anybody else. You got to grind it out as hard as anybody else. And if you do that, you'll be successful. And if you don't do that, you won't be successful. And the reason I wanted Erik to sit here is not because I wanted you guys to hear a story about grinding it out, but what I wanted you to hear was that this is a guy who has played a fundamental role in the tech ecosystem in Kenya, and he's grinding it as hard as anybody else. And he's got a wife, and he's got 3 kids. I'm lucky. I've just got a wife who's a lawyer who earns a lot more money than I do, and she's more beautiful than I am as well. So I've got it really good. But she understands work ethic. She works harder than I do, as a lawyer. But that's what it takes. Right? So it's not easy for anybody. It doesn't matter where you come from or what background you have. It's hard for everybody. There's always something that you've got to grind through. And I guess the message is that if he can do it and I can do it, and I'm not particularly smart, I'm a biologist by trade, I studied zoology, then so can all of you. Because I'm pretty sure that most of you out here who code are probably better coders than I am. Right? But I code until 2 o'clock in the morning. How long do you code for? And that's the difference, right? That's the little secret sauce that makes it happen.
The hustle never stops.
Yeah, the hustle never stops. Right, I got to get on a plane tonight. In a couple of hours, I got to go back to London. I got to carry on working. I'm not going to sleep on the plane. I got to be at work, and I got to lead 45 people tomorrow, the whole day with 4 hours of sleep, if I'm lucky. That's the hustle, right? So what I think you've got to do is you've got to figure out who you are. Are you the hustler? Are you the coder? Are you the entrepreneur, and then you've got to play to your strengths. Don't play to your weaknesses, play to your strengths. And figure out what that is as early as possible, and then surround yourself with good people who complement you, which is what Erik has done. And that's the message from this talk, is it's possible, it can be done. And you've got a great environment and a great ecosystem to do it from. So what are you waiting for?
And just because I don't know what's going to happen later this evening, I want, please give a big Nairobi thank you to Gareth for putting this event on for us.